Everybody, this is Hackett. Back with another video. In this video, we're gonna do some network automation. When I say network automation, what I mean is, as you can see, we have this topology here. And what I really want to do with network automation is to set up OSPF on all of these switches. We have 5 switches in total, and then we have 2 PCs connected to 2 random switches, and then we have a connection going outside to the cloud, and by this cloud I mean the actual PC that I'm using. So we're going to be using Python to write this script, and then we're going to be using SSH using that Python script to automate the OSPF configuration on all 5 of these switches at the same time. This is going to be a very I wouldn't say too lengthy, but you have to have some basic understanding of Python to be able to write this script. I'm gonna make it so that we don't see the results in the terminal, but we see the results in a separate window for each switch. So that will be much easier to look through the configuration output and see if it was actually done or not. So let's get started. My taskbar is not showing up for some reason. There we go. Okay, so let's get started with our script. We're gonna use Paramiko for this for sure. That's one of the main things. This is gonna allow us to make an SSH connection to the switches themselves. Then we're also gonna use time. Time is gonna be used so we can give a delay of a second or two in between each command. And then we're also gonna use tkinter. We're going to use it as TK. So this Python library is basically used for graphical interfaces, you could say, but we're not really doing a lot of graphical interface. We're just basically showing a window that shows us the output of the commands that we ran on each switch. We're also going to use, we're going to import scrolled text, so we can scroll on each window and see the text results or the output result of each command. And then we're going to use threading. Threading is basically us having to run multiple SSH connections at the same time. And then we're also going to import queue, so we can wait for one SSH connection's output before the other one shows up. Using this, we can have separate windows showing us the results for all different windows that are going to be displayed. Okay, so next step is going to be, we're going to define a function. Let's call this display output. This is going to be the function that will display us the output, and it's going to get the host name. This will come from the SSH connection, and then it's also going to get the output. This is also going to come from the SSH connection. So these are the parameters we're going to be receiving for this function. Okay, so let's create a window. It's going to be a top level window. The top level function is going to allow us to have multiple different windows. Okay, top level, there we go, perfect. It's a function, don't forget that it's a function. And then we're going to title our window .title, and we're using the host name in here. Let's give it like a nice little text here too. I'm going to use fstring command output for host name. Alright, looks good here. Let's write some nice little comment here. This is going to show the output in a window. That sounds good. Okay. Okay, now let's move on to creating the scrolled text. So we're like the scroll text widget, so we can scroll our text in the output. So let's go create scroll text. Okay. Let's go with the text area. Put the name here, and then actually PyCharms is pretty smart. It's picking up everything I'm about to do. So scroll text area, yeah, that's exactly what we want, and then we're gonna pass it the window that we just created up here, and then we're gonna give it let's wrap it with tk.word, give it a width of, let's say 100 should be fine. Give it a height of 100 too. Yep. And what else do we need? Let's get a font. Let's go with Korea should be fine. And 10. Sorry, it's supposed to be out here. 10. Yeah, that should do it. Text area is done now. Packed area with some padding. Yeah, let's do that. Text area pack. Give it a pad of x 10, and then pad of y should also be 10. All right, that's the text area, the scroll area. And now we're gonna insert the output into this text window, scroll text window. Let's go insert output into the text area. Sorry, in the text area. Okay, this we're gonna use the text area dot insert, and we're gonna go tk. I'm using tk here because we imported tkinter as tk, so that if that's confusing you guys, it should make sense now. And we're gonna feed it the output. So we're getting the output in the main function parameter. That's what we're gonna be using here, and we got the host name from there too in the title. Okay, now that's that. And we also want to make the text area read only too, so you can't really put anything in there since we're just reading the output from the commands that we're passing. Read only text area. To do that, we go again text area dot configure. It's going to configure the text area, and we want to set the state equals disabled. All right. So this is basically our display output function. Should make sense. Not too complicated. Let's go ahead and define our next function. Define. So we want to connect to the switch. Define connect to switch. Do it. And this is gonna have a host name. This is gonna have a username. This is all coming from SSH, by the way. This is gonna be also having a password, and this is gonna have a command, and then output Q. Okay, perfect. It's picking up everything. It's very smart. I like PyCharms. It's very nice. Okay, let's think this through now. So we want to get an SSH session going on for a particular switch. So let's try setting that up. We're going to go with try SSH client. So this is basically us setting up an SSH client. It's already picking up Paramiko.ssh client. Remember, we imported Paramiko here, so that's doing its job there. Great, here, and then we want to it's already picked this up. We want to add the auto add policy for any missing host key policy. So let's go ahead and do that. Very nice, already applied, perfect. Now we want to connect to our switch. So connect to our switch. To connect to our switch, we will go SSH client. It's already picked that up too, so we're going to connect. We're going to use hostname, the parameter we're passing up here. Username is going to be the username, password is going to be the password. Straightforward, pretty easy. Let's go ahead and also print that we are let's use f-string, and we're going to be like, hey, we're connected to, let's use hostname here, whatever the hostname is for the switch, and close it. Perfect. Pretty straightforward and easy. So we're connecting the switch. Now we're gonna open a shell to send commands. We already established SSH connection here. Now we're gonna try and send commands to that SSH session. So let's invoke a shell, ssh.shell invoke shell. Crazy how PyCharm's picking this up. Very surprised with this. Let's go and shell.send here. So we're gonna now start sending commands. So we could just pass commands, but what I'm gonna do is we're not just gonna be using a single command, so we can't do it this way. What I'm gonna do first, the first thing is that we want to make sure that the terminal length is set to 0. So that way, you know how in Cisco switches you have to press spacebar every time when the text is exceeding a certain limit, and it shows the more option at the very bottom, and you have to keep spamming text space to go through that. So this is going to disable that. So make sure you put this in here. Okay, and then after we run this, we're gonna use our time module that we imported here. So we're gonna put everything to sleep for, let's say, 1 second here to give it some time to breathe. And let's also put an output here, which is gonna be equal to nothing. I'll get to it while we did this later. So let's now the command, right? We're not running a single command, we're running multiple commands. So we're going to use a for loop for that, for command in command. So this is going to go through each command in the command list. So let's start doing what we're supposed to be doing here. So let's go print. Let's do an f string here. So we're going to be like, hey, we're running this command at this moment. So running command and then command. So this is going to show us, hey, we're running this command at this moment, like currently going through this command. Pretty straightforward, should make sense. And then we're going to use our shell to send that command. Shell send. And we're going to use command here. Plus, make sure you put this new line here, because we want to use a new line for each command. And that's that. This is going to send the command to the Cisco switch. And we put it to sleep for, let's say, 2 seconds here. I think 2 seconds is perfect here. It makes a lot of sense. Okay. Now that is done, we're going to get the output for that command. So let's go get the output. Okay, so while, let's use a while loop here. Shell.receive is ready. Well, when we have some output, while we have some output in an output variable plus equal shell receive, we want to use 2048 here, and then we want to decode it. So that's our output. I have to use UTF-4 there. Okay. Now that is just our for loop to actually send the commands and then receive them. Now let's backtrack a little bit. We're out of the for loop now. Now what we want to do is we want to put the output in the queue for the thread to handle, if that makes sense. So remember, we imported thread in here and imported queue here. So we're gonna use that now. So let's go ahead and do that. Output queue dot put, and then we're gonna use our host name and then the output. So output is what we got here, and then we're using the queue here to put it in the queue. Okay. Now after this, what we're going to do is we're going to close the SSH session. Close the SSH session. Do that. We will do SSH client dot close. The session is closed, and we also want to let the user know that, hey, connection closed. And remember, we did a try here, so now we also got to except for any exceptions, exception SE. And then if we get any errors, we can use this, and we can be like print hey. We're gonna use f string, and I'm like there was an error. And then let's make it more understandable, so we can use like the host name here, whichever switch the error is coming from, and like use E. Remember, we're using exception as E, so the error is going to be E here. That's great. And then we can use output q dot put here, and it can be like host name and E, or we can, if you want, you know, you can add a string and be like error. There's an error, and then we like, oh sorry, error, and then we can be like E here. Okay, now we're done with our connect to switch function. Hopefully you all understand what we did there. Now we're gonna move on to handling the outputs. We had a function here that displays output, but now we're gonna handle the output. So we're gonna go ahead and define another function here, define handle output. This is gonna receive the output that we got here when we were connecting to the switch. So output q, and then it's also gonna receive root. This will also be explained later why we're using root here. All right. And then inside this function, we're going to declare another function. We're going to check if there's anything in the queue. And let's go. Okay, so let's think this through. Okay, so let's go while there's nothing in the output queue and it's empty. We're gonna pass these variables into the output queue function, and then we're gonna get stuff. So what's really happening is here is we're calling this function, and then we're storing whatever we get into these variables. So we're getting host name, and then we're getting output. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna display that output, host name and output, to root. So that's where root comes into play. Well, not to root, but like, so we're using this display output here, and then we're going to root.after 100, and then we're going to check the queue. Okay. And once all this while loop is done and the function is done, sorry. It's not a function, I apologize. It is a function, but we're calling it inside the function, so we don't use those. Okay. And once this is done, we call the function inside the handle output function. There you go. So this basically checks if there's anything in the queue. If there's not, then we get this, and then we display it. And we're also calling the display output function here. So that makes sense. And we're feeding it the host name and the output. So this is just checking the queue and making sure that, hey, if there's nothing, then we get this, and then we send it to display, or we run the function here, display output, and this is basically gonna show the windows, if there's multiple windows. This is basically checking, hey, if there's like one of the windows failed and we have nothing in there, let's move on to the next window, at least we can display that. Because we're gonna be running this on multiple switches, not just one switch. All right, moving on. Okay, so we have figured out how to connect to a single switch so far. We've also figured out the output, and we've also figured out how to handle the queue. Now, we're going to be having more than one switch here. We have 5 switches. So we're going to have to find a way of connecting to multiple switches. So let's call this function connect to multiple switches. And this is gonna get a let's say like a list of switches, right? So we will make this later. So switches, and this is also gonna get commands. This is also gonna be a list of commands, and then this is also gonna get the output. All right, so let's go through this. Now we're gonna bring in threads into this. We're gonna start doing stuff with threading now. So threads, start with 0 threads in there, there's nothing going on. And then we're gonna be for, so switch in switches, this is basically the dictionary we're gonna be using that's gonna have multiple switch IP addresses, usernames, passwords, all that stuff. And then we're gonna be like, let's pick one, and then let's go through the whole list of switches. Okay, so we're gonna be like, okay, print be like, yeah, basically what PyCharm is just picking here. So let's say we're connecting to the first switch here now. Connecting to switch in the for loop of switches. So we're going to do the first switch, and also don't forget. So this is gonna be a dictionary. So we wanna like call the stuff inside the dictionary. So let's say the host name. Yeah. So we'll be like, hey, we're going to this switch, and the host name for that switch is this. This is basically the IP address of the switch. Okay. And then we're gonna start working with threads here. So thread equals threading dot thread. Whoa. I don't know what just happened. Okay, there we go. Threading dot thread. And we call this function. And then our target is the function right up here. Connect to switch. Connect to switch. And then we're gonna give it a comma here. So basically what threading can do is run arguments like this. So here we can be like, let's see if, yeah, it picked up. So here we can be like, hey, so these are the arguments we want to run, and we're getting these arguments from our switch dictionary here. Let me just press tab here. So it's getting the switch host name, switch username, switch password, and then it's getting the commands, which is going to be a whole different list that's going to have all the commands that we want to run, and then it's getting the output queue. Okay, now that is done. So we had an empty threads list here, so we want to append this once this runs. So threads.append thread, thread. So this is going to append the list with each thread that's going to run. So each switch is going to have its own thread. So this is basically going to run at the same time. So all the switches are going to be ran at the same time. It's not going to be one after other. And then after that, we want to start the thread. Thread.start. Okay. Now, okay, I think we're all done here with the main functions. All the main functions are set up. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make the switches the list, which is gonna have a dictionary in there. So let's go like this, dictionary in there, and then we're gonna have host name in here. Host name, okay, the IP addresses. So I know the IP addresses for all the switches we have in our topology. So it's gonna start with 10.1.1.10. Then we're gonna have a username for that switch. I have made a video on how to set up SSH on each switch. You should definitely watch this video after going through this, so you understand how to set up SSH properly and how to use a local login process for SSH instead of having to use something else. So it makes a lot of sense to do it this way. Okay, you have username, then we have password, which is also admin in my case, and that's it. And then we have 5 of these. Tab 2, 3, 4, 5. Oops. 5. Okay, let me just change the password here for each one. Admin. Admin. Okay. Now, this was all the switches. Now what we want to do is .11. Okay, so we don't have an 11, I believe. Yeah, we have 12, we have 13, we have 14, and we have 15. Yep. Okay. Now we want to make a list of the commands we want to run. That's very important. What do we want to run in here? So when setting up OSPF, it's pretty straightforward. Once the SSH connection is established, we go to conft. It's going to bring us into the configuration terminal. Then we're going to be like router OSPF 1. Then we're going to provide it a network, which is going to be, I'm doing it on all networks that I can find. So 0.0.0.0, 255. 255.255.255, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I just want to make sure area is 0. And then we want to exit. And that should do it, right? Yeah. All right. Now we have to call all the functions. So let's go with the root function first. Root tk.tk. Okay, and this is a function, sorry. Can't forget that. And then we want to root.withdraw. This is going to hide the root window. Oops, function, sorry about that. And then output q is equal to q dot. Yep, okay. And then we're gonna run our connect to multiple switches here. We're gonna pass it the switches list dictionary we just made. Then we're gonna pass it the commands, and then we're gonna pass it the output queue. And then we wanna handle the output. We're gonna call that function, and then we have output queue and root in there. And then we have root.main loop. All right. I think that's it with the script. Let's see if we're missing anything. Okay. Are we able to run multiple threads and have the display? Okay, I think we're missing a functionality where if one, like, it won't be able to open multiple windows at the same time. So for that, what we're gonna do is for threads in thread. Oh, sorry, for thread in, my bad. For thread in threads, we're gonna join the threads. With a timeout of 0. No, 0. Okay. Let's go ahead and try this. There's a problem somewhere. As you can see, we have 5 windows open for each switch, which is cool. That's exactly what we wanted. Let's see what the problem is. I think I know what the problem is. Yep, we're missing a comma here. I figured. Stop the script. Let's run it one more time. All right, so this is 10.1.1.12. We got the terminal length is 0. We got conft. OSPF is another typo I made there. Okay, great. Let's go and fix that before we can do anything else. Where is the typo? Another comma. Great. Perfect. Let's try it one more time. So terminal end conf t, we got into the configuration terminal, router OSPF1, network 0.02225, exit, everything worked out as we're supposed to. Same thing here with the .15, same thing here with the .13, same thing here with the .10, and same thing here with the .14. Okay, now the fun thing about this script is that you can change the commands to whatever you want. It doesn't have to be this. So I could be like, hey, show IP interface brief, or and then the second command could be like show version. Third command could be like show interface trunk. And let's just run these three commands and see what we get. There we go, magic. All right, so for .13, it worked perfectly fine. We can see the show interface brief, shows us all the interfaces. I have VLAN1 with IP address 10.1.1.13. Then we got the show version, worked perfectly fine. Show interface trunk, didn't show anything because I believe I don't have any trunk ports. Same thing here. Everything worked perfectly fine. Same thing here, everything worked perfectly fine. Same thing with this one. Yeah, seems to work. Pretty straightforward and easy. Yeah, so this opens a lot of possibilities. So if you have like a lot of switches in your production environment and you want to configure them, you just write up the script, have it saved somewhere, and then you can use it. Get the commands run on multiple switches at the same time. It will make your life easy, make your work easy. So I highly suggest getting more into Python. You can use tools like ChatGPT, like this script that I made here. I initially had a lot of help from ChatGPT writing this, so it guided me through setting this up very nice and easily. With the AI, the generative AI, it's very easy to do this stuff now. So just have a basic understanding of Python, so you're able to understand what's going on, and then just you can make it do whatever you want. Initially, I just had this in the terminal, which I didn't really like, especially when I have like 4 to 5 switches running at the same time. I can't just scroll through all of it and see. So I was like, hey, I remember I learned this module a while back. So how about we implement this? And my mind was blank on all this stuff. Like it's been so long since I've used the Tkinter. So then I was like, oh, I can use ChatGPT. And then I got help from ChatGPT. I asked it to, hey, can you help me make this? And then it guided me through, and we were able to set this up in no time. I'd say it took me like max 40-45 minutes setting this up. So yeah, I highly recommend you guys doing this if you are a professional network administrator or a network architecture. If you're doing anything with like switches or routers, or then this is very helpful. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And have a wonderful rest of y'all's day.